Hey guys, welcome to this video. My name is Alvin, and today we're going to be talking about Steve Jobs. Now, this question came up to me when I was sitting with a couple of friends, and we were talking about things, and naturally, as tech geeks, the question inevitably revolved to Steve Jobs, and the question came up that, was Steve Jobs a visionary or a really, really good marketer? Did he really change Apple, and why is Apple so different, so dramatically different from what it was before Steve Jobs, died? And, why is Apple not the same today? And that is what I have been pondering and thinking about for the last few years after Steve Jobs have passed away. And, I think I've got an answer today. This is my opinion on the matter, and if you are interested, then please, by all means, do watch till the end. Let this video begin. Now, before we get to Steve Jobs, let me talk a little bit about the philosophy behind Apple. Now, we are an emotional creature, right? We all know that. We're capable of feelings, we're capable of feeling love and hate and whatnot. And as emotional creatures, we tend to want to have this feeling of belonging. We want to have this feeling that, we are special, that we're unique, that we're different. And if we don't have that, if we're not emotional, a logical being would kill themselves the moment they have consciousness. Because why would you want to live 80 years until you die? Why not just do it now? It's so much time consuming. It's so much time saving if you do it now instead of wait for a long time. Luckily, that's not how we think. Luckily, that's not how we operate. So we live on. We live on to feel things. We live on to want to feel like we belong in a certain part of community, in this and that. And that is how religion exists. With this sense, this urges to feel like we belong, we look to religion. Religion doesn't sell us any product. It just sells us that feeling. It's a service. It gives us that feeling. Now, looking at this objectively, for any of you who are a religious person, don't take offense in this. I'm not trying to say anything bad. I'm just looking at it objectively. So if you look at religion objectively, they give you the feeling. They give you the feeling, the sense of, yes, you belong in this place, that you worship this God means you have a certain identity, right? And different religions have different identity. Catholics believe in a certain thing. They do things a certain way. Muslim does things a certain way. They believe in a certain thing that's different from Catholics. And every religion has this sense of belonging, this sense of tradition. And if you fit into that group, then you belong to that group. Then you can call yourself proudly, oh, I'm a Catholic, oh, I'm a Muslim, oh, I'm a Hindu, oh, I'm a Buddhist, right? So that is what religion's for. And, it eventually evolved to becoming our identity. When we associate ourselves with particular religion, we call ourselves that, and it becomes who we are. Right? If you're a Catholic, and anybody comes up to you and be like, oh, I think, the quote in that Bible is inaccurate, and it's not true, and it's illogical. What that person is saying to your ears is, I think you're illogical, you're stupid, and, it just doesn't make sense why you would believe in something like that. So when we believe in something so deeply, it becomes us. It's a part of who we are, and we take criticism very, very personally, and that is why we fight tooth to nail. That's why we see wars going on between religions, one to the other, because people take it so personally, because it's a part of who that person is. And so that is the same with Apple. Apple is a religion. Apple is the cult, and Steve Jobs is the Pope. Let me explain. Apple started with this belief that they wanted to change the world, and that came purely from Steve Jobs. It was Wozniak who, invented the company and who ran the company, if he was the CEO, Apple wouldn't be where it is today. Apple wouldn't have changed the world. Apple wouldn't have had all those loyal fans. Apple wouldn't have survived this long, probably. It would have gone, like, after a few years of the technology that was invented, somebody would have stole the technology and, made it their own, and have, with more resources and whatnot, big companies would survive longer and would take the technology and improve it to be their own. And Apple wouldn't have had a company that is so big till today. So how is it that Apple survived? How is it that Apple could still live on when it's just basically another technology company that made computers, right? Computers can be copied. Why not buy HP and, why buy a Mac if you can buy an HP at a cheaper price and similar specs and similar quality? We buy Apple because of the belief. Because the things that Steve Jobs did when the company began, that is why we buy Apple. Steve Jobs laid the belief of Apple in the first few bricks of the empire that we see today as Apple. Those first few bricks of belief that he was so intensely passionate about was what made Apple. Apple is a tech company, but that is not primarily why you see loyal fans come to Apple. People come to Apple because they feel like they belong. They feel like they're the crazy ones. Because that's what Apple's all about. That is the image Steve Jobs was able to bring out of Apple, right? He believed that, he can change the world if he could get a bunch of misfits and the crazy ones to unlock their potentials and, do the things that they most desired to do. Do their art, do their work, be who they are, right? And that was what Apple was doing. Apple was giving people that tool. That tool was in forms of iPhone, that tool was in form of the Mac and whatnot that Apple have created over the years. But that was just a tool. But with the tool, Apple gave these people the sense that you belong here. You belong with us. Because you and we think the same way. We want to change the world too. And we were the ones that were eradicated from the normal society of people. We were eradicated from school, and they told us that we are not going to do anything new. We're not going to change the world. We're just daydreaming, and our ideas and dreams are unrealistic, and it won't happen, right? And Steve Jobs was that visionary who built Apple. He did not design the iPhone himself. He did not design the Mac himself. But he built the company. That is what he did. That was his job in the company. That was what he was famous for. And he should be. He was a leader. He was a marketer. He was a leader. He was a visionary. And Steve Wozniak wouldn't have been able to do that. Steve Wozniak was an engineer, and that was all he was. He was the guy who built the Mac, and he did a great job, but that wasn't enough to build Apple. He did not build Apple today. That was all Steve Jobs. But the question would be, how did Steve Jobs do it? How did a guy who knew nothing about nothing about the computer, but nothing about coding, or not sufficient about building a computer, how did he do all this? Well, he didn't have to know all that. He was a marketer. Steve Jobs was a marketer through and through. He was a great one. And now, marketers have got bad rap for what they do. So I'm just going to clarify once and for all what I think of great marketers and what they look like for me. Great marketers are the ones that are able to communicate what they believe in truly in their heart out to the world with passion and aggression. And everything they've got in their heart and souls, they're able to communicate it out to the world. And those are the great ones. The ones that lies are not great ones, because you could catch their lies if you follow it back far enough, you could see that they don't believe in what they're saying. It's not one of those ads you see out on TV. No, Apple ads are ads that Apple themselves believed in. When they say they think differently, they don't just say it because the word sounds good or that it will attract these kind of people. No, they say it because they believe it. And you can see it in their products, in the way they operate it, in the way the company was built, in the way Steve Jobs, did every single thing in his life. It showed that he had consistency. And the only way you can have that much of consistency is unless you are a psychopathic liar, you actually believe in what you're saying, right? So unless you believe in what you're saying, then you must actually be a psychopathic liar, which Steve Jobs wasn't. It was honest. It was all honest. And now, how did you do that? How does one get to do that? The part of the brain that is actually responsible for those feeling of belief and gut feeling and the decision-making part is not responsible for word. It's not responsible for language. So it's hard to communicate how you feel into words. That's why a lot of us suffer from that. Most of us aren't able to communicate it well. When you ask someone, why do you love your spouse? Why do you love your wife? Or why do you love your kids? When you ask someone why do you love your wife, most people would say, well, they're the other half of myself. There was two missing part, and then we came together, and that was why, because they're the missing part of who I am. If you say that, you're pathetic, because what you're saying, if you logically deconstruct that, it means that your whole life you've been incomplete, and you've never been happy before you met that person. So to say that, it means that you are desperate. You were desperate, and if you don't have this person by your side, you're incomplete and you are incapable of doing anything by yourself. That is codependent relationship, not a good relationship. But of course, that's not what most people who say those stuff mean. Right? They cannot articulate their feelings into proper words. That's why they say stuff like that. When you ask great business leaders, why did you do what you did? Why did you make that decision? They can give you all the specifics, and it wouldn't make sense to you. It would be like, no, well, actually, if you said that you think the stock would go up, no, I could disprove you with these logic and that logic. And when it comes down to it, when it really, really comes down to it, it's that gut feeling. They'll say that. It's that gut feeling that led them to do this. They believe that it was the right decision. But then again, where does those gut feeling comes from? It doesn't come from your gut. That's obvious, right? It comes from that part of the brain that makes the decision, but it couldn't articulate it into words that makes sense. Steve Jobs was one of the very, very great marketers out there who could do that, who could articulate what he felt into words. And he did it greatly, right? That's why the word think differently in Apple's slogan meant a great deal to people. It wasn't just two words combined. It was something that represented something a lot bigger. It was something that represented what they truly believed in. And that was because he was able to communicate well with people. He was able to communicate what he felt with people. And that comes across in every single product and every single launch. That's why people, when they're sitting at an Apple launch, WWDC, or in September when Apple launches their iPhone, they're at the edge of their seat. Steve Jobs has their breath in his hand. And if he didn't launch the product on time, he probably would have killed some people out of, not breathing or suffocation, right? That was how much he's got all these people's attention. They were all sitting, listening, waiting, and he was building up, and finally, to this launch, it was like an opera. It was like a theater show, and he was one of the greatest performer out there who could actually communicate and, bring that excitement into people and build such great excitement around his product. That was what Steve Jobs did, and that was the credit he well deserved. He was a visionary. He was the one that saw the future and led people to it. He led his team to it. When you're a leader, there's a misconception that you have to know how, every single mechanic of your product or the work you do, how it works, right? It's a misconception that's out there everywhere, right? If you are a car manufacturer, if you're the CEO of the company, you must know how to repair the engine. You must know what the name of this part is, right? You don't have to. Being a leader doesn't mean you have to know every component of the work you do. Do you think the President of the United States knows every single thing that he does? No. He has advisors around him to lead him to making good decisions. But the thing he must have, the thing great leaders must have, is that intuition, that leadership skill, that are willing to lead people, that are willing to walk into battlefield head first before anyone else goes. And those are great leaders, the ones that's able to yep, we're going to go there. Nobody has ever gone there before. We're going to do it, and I'm going to lead you there. And, you don't have to worry, because if anything happens, it happens to me first before it comes to you. Right? That's what great leaders does. They make people feel secure, and they lead people to places they've never, ever imagined being possible to go to. And that is what Steve Jobs was. He led Apple's employees into creating products that the world didn't think was possible. He led the Apple followers into seeing this world that was out there that nobody thought was possible. He took the control from big companies and put it in people's hands. Without Mac, without the iPhone, we wouldn't be able to communicate like this. It wouldn't be that easy. It would just be a media company communicating to you, and you just listen to it. People like me cannot talk to you, right? It's hard for me to get access to you, but products like iPhone made that possible. Products like the Mac made that possible. Bridge the gap between normal people who think differently and the consumer. And that was what Apple was all about. And the reason Apple has declined after Steve Jobs went was because he didn't leave a Steve Jobs behind. And this is just a philosophical thing for you to think about, but most leaders don't leave great leaders like them behind. You don't see a Martin Luther King leaving a Martin Luther King behind, right? Steve Jobs didn't leave a Steve Jobs behind. And that is what happens. Partly because they're selfish and they want attention to themselves, partly because they may not have the time to train other people. But imagine a world where great leaders actually take the time to train someone, to mentor someone, so that when they're gone, this person could take their shoes and still keep the company going. If that had happened to Apple, we wouldn't be talking much about Steve Jobs today. We'd just be talking about the next product launch and how exciting that is, instead of talking about the old leader and reminiscing about the past. That is the problem with Apple. Tim Cook is not a Steve Jobs. He's a smart guy. He's a very, very smart guy. And he's the kind of guy that, takes the great leader's visionary ideas and make it happen. But he's not a visionary. He's not the guy that can lead Apple and show people that's where we're going to go. No. People don't follow people necessarily like Tim Cook because he's a logical guy. He's a very calculative. He knows how to do the math. He knows how to make the math works. But that is not, he doesn't embody that belief that Jobs did embodied. And so that's why Apple is different today. That's why Apple doesn't feel the same. That's why Apple loyal fans like myself are doubting or looking at specifications in every product before buying them. Before, I wouldn't even think about specification. Who cares about that? Let's go. Let's get this product. This Apple Watch is going to change the world, and I need to get it. Right? That was what led me to buying all those products before. But now it's different. It's different because Now there's no longer that feeling of this product's going to change the world. It's just that this product is great. It's got the new camera and it has the new A7 chip. Let's get that one, right? Because it's going to be the faster than the old one. So yeah, that is kind of what Apple has turned into. It is just basically now another tech company out there, just like Samsung is. It still does make great products. It didn't stop doing that, and it still will make great products, but the belief is slowly dying every day. And unless that is revived, I don't see Apple leading into the future as, you know, the company that changed the world. So that's my thought on this. It's a bit long, the video is a bit long, but if you want to learn more about the psychology and what Simon Sinek calls the golden circle, the purpose and why we do what we do, and how great companies and great leaders lead people with this purpose first before product, go check his TED Talk out. I'll leave the link down below. Most of these ideas are not mine. It was his, and, you know, combined with some of mine. But if you want to check where the source came from, the link will be down below to his TED Talk. It is amazing. I loved what he did, and he kind of gave me an explanation of why Apple is not what it used to be. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. If you did like it, leave a like. If you want to see more, subscribe down below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.